the fear that you have is part of the problem. If you get caught in the fear, we're not going to be able to get to the solution. Understand that fear, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed efforts to convert retreat into advance. That is such a great quote for what keeps SLDs from moving into stage 5. I overcame my fear, and it was the fear of the pain that would happen as a result of me trying to get better that kept me from exercising. The fear of the pain, every one of you guys who identify as an SLD or who work with SLDs should recognize the magnitude of someone's fear of the pain that follows when they try to do something good. And I promise you, they're not making it up. I didn't make up my problem. It was that spiral, that self-defeating spiral. Because I will say, and I won't back down, that to do my stages, you need to be in psychotherapy. But not everyone can afford psychotherapy. Not everyone can find a good psychotherapist. And I will say, through probably thousands, because I don't really count these things, 1,000 or more emails or comments, you've saved my life. I could not have done this without your work. Your book has saved my life. I have received 1,000+ messages like that, and I'm not exaggerating. And many of these people are not in psychotherapy. I have people say, I'm in stage 7 now. I don't write back saying that's impossible, you're not in psychotherapy, because my goal is not to defeat someone. So I will say that my 10-stage program is exponentially more powerful and effective if you are working with a psychotherapist. We talked about this before, and I will remind you, is that finding the right psychotherapist that is open to these methods is the challenge. I've been told that if you work these methods yourself, that people have achieved a lot of progress. I'm just not sure if it's lasting. So psychotherapy is a must. It's just too hard to do by oneself. Another important exercise is the cost-benefit analysis exercise. And I'm going to just quickly go through this because there's so many different ways to do this, but is to accurately, with the help of a neutral individual, is to do your pros and your cons. What is the cost of doing this? What is the benefit of doing this? Now, in order to do the cost-benefit analysis the way that is prescribed by the self-love recovery treatment method, is you have to do cost-benefit of if you do it and a cost-benefit of if you don't do it. They're different lists, and they look different. And you have to do it with another person because we tend to, through fear, through anxiety, either overemphasize and exaggerate what bad could happen, or because of naivete, underestimate it. So then you have to ask yourself, what is the risk-reward, another term for cost-benefit analysis? What's the risk-reward of SLA freedom? By the way, this is, we have this as a big sign in our retreat. It's the central graphic of the self-love recovery retreat. Anais Nin said, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. At what point do you realize that your efforts of protecting yourself to avoid pain actually results in bigger losses than opening up and finding self-love and happiness? Because we know that protecting yourself from harm Well, that's good. That can help you. But there's a point of time where the hunkering down in protective mode is more harmful. If you do a cost-benefit analysis, you do the worst-case scenario exercise, and you proceed fully and accurately in stage 4, all of a sudden you make that choice. Brene Brown's video changed so many of our lives, but it was the original video that she did on TED where she talks about courage and vulnerability. It had tremendous impact on me. And I think of that video whenever I bring up this slide. What is the worth of self-love abundance? These are questions to ask yourself, to journal, to talk to a therapist about, to a friend. What is the risk reward of having a smaller home, living in an apartment, versus being trapped for the rest of your life in your big home, in your big neighborhood, with your big, wonderful neighborhood communities? What is the cost benefit of working again versus being trapped? Working maybe in a job that you would think would be crappy. You know what? When you have self-love abundance and you make that transition and you go to a job and you make $20 an hour or even less than that and you're surviving, I promise you, you're not feeling humiliated. You're feeling like you're in a beginning stage of your life. Less friends and family versus being trapped. Less money versus being comfortable. Potential to be free and happy versus risky relationships. The cost-benefit exercise will help you answer these questions. These questions, and there are so many more, I could have easily gone on to 2 or 3 slides. These are the questions that you, and this would be traditional cognitive behavioral psychotherapy, where we examine our thoughts and our reliance of our thoughts on its impact on our feelings. If our thoughts are not based upon accurate assumptions, we create feelings that are not only harmful, but counterproductive to our own psychological health. It's a great question, and thank you for it. Domestic violence, does that enter into the worst case scenario? Yes. Domestic violence is in itself a very important factor to consider in stage 4, which is why I did the Duluth Power and Control Wheel. That was all about domestic violence. Part of predictive awareness is to understand if you are in a domestically violent relationship, is to understand if you do this, what do you do in response? We'll be talking about that in a few slides, but absolutely hugely important because we have to keep you safe. We have to keep the SLD safe. We have to keep the kids safe. One of the theories in the field of psychotherapy that I was enamored with back when I was in Boston University was family systems. And basically family systems theory says that relationships are a system. If one part of the relationship changes, it impacts the system, and change makes any relationship uncomfortable, even if it's positive change or negative change. So family systems impacted the creation of my relationship compatibility theory. That basically says if you are a 5 on a -5, which would be SLD, and the human magnet syndrome says you are then going to be in a relationship with a +5 because zero-sum balance is what explains the human magnet syndrome. You need a 0 in order for a relationship to be stable. It's the dance, the codependent narcissist dance. That's actually the explanation that started everything. The leader needs the follower. The -5 needs the +5. But if the -5 SLD is in therapy and they start to get better through the 4 and the 3, it makes everything uncomfortable. The narcissists do not feel comfortable, or your friends, once you start having a voice or having an opinion. So stage 5 upsets the dysfunctional balance. And if we understand family systems as a, not a kaleidoscope, what do you call those things? A mobile. Yeah, this comes right out of my 1980s books. But mobiles are all, they're these pieces of artwork, I don't know, that everything is hung down by wires and they're perfectly balanced. If you should change anything in that mobile, so this could represent a dysfunctional family, narcissist wife, codependent husband, but it's stable because everyone knows the rules and they're playing their roles. What happens if codependent SLD husband gets into therapy and starts to have an opinion and starts to talk about boundaries? Well, it becomes unpredictable and unbalanced. And that's important to know because there's a lot of psychological theory that explains why getting better is an uphill battle, and situations, systems, relationships, marriages, work, the world around you is not going to greet you with hugs and thank you as you start to have an opinion and set boundaries. Because the world around you are likely to be narcissists or SLDs, because that's how the human magnet syndrome works. It's just not about falling in love and marrying or having a boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner who's a narcissist. It's extremely common that if you are an SLD, of course you're going to obviously meet or fall in love with a narcissist, but many of your friends and relationships outside of the marriage are going to be impacted by your SLDD. There are exceptions. So anyone that's ready to tell me there are exceptions, there are.